I'm not saying he's old. I don't poke bears, but LeBron James looked like perhaps the wear and tear of the series and the travel might have taken a toll on his legs in game 5.
Well, look, we've been talking about this since before this series started. This 5 games in 9 days from games 3 to 7, the longer this series went, the more it was going to benefit the Grizzlies. And I go back to game 4. I know LeBron summoned the energy to get that incredible layup at the end of regulation to tie the game, made those plays, had the very fitting ending over Dillon Brooks in overtime. The guy was fairly effectively guarded by Xavier Tillman most of the game. Like, this is not the same version of LeBron we've seen in the past, in part because, again, he's playing on a bum wheel and he's 38. So, like, the fact he's even doing this is unbelievable. But as you talk about going back and forth, flying 2,000 miles every other day, playing a super young Grizzlies team that's going to push it and run and might actually start playing Luke Kennard now.
Oh, but go on, and then I'll make a point.
Well, no, I mean, we'll see what happens with his shoulder, but
right.
The Grizzlies have come into this series as it's gone along, and the longer it goes, the more it favors them, especially if Memphis could somehow win this game Friday night. There's going to be a 36-hour turnaround to this game 7, and that is the worst case scenario.
Well, and they'd be going home. You know, Desmond Bain says the best fans in the NBA. Obviously, that's kind of, you know, pumping up the old Grind City folks, but they do have the best home record in the league. They just spanked the Lakers on that home court. Like, if the Lakers better close this thing out in 6, or they got
to treat this like a game 7.
Yeah, you've been saying that all day on TV today, and I agree with that. Here's the thing I'll say about LeBron. I have seen in the past LeBron evaluate a playoff game as not going his way and him go into energy conservation mode. I've seen it happen. I've seen it work. And he looked like he was in energy conservation mode. That said, I remember him doing that when he was 31, 33.
Right.
You know, where he sort of just made a value judgment. I'm not sure he had an option except for energy conservation mode.
Well, I honestly thought Darvin Ham should have made a value judgment, honestly, early in the 4th quarter. LeBron played till, I don't remember when they pulled him exactly, but he was in there several minutes into the 4th quarter. They were down 25 early in the 4th. I'm like, sit him. He ended up playing 34 minutes. It's not like they really ran his minutes up, but I think they could have kept that under 30. You mentioned Luke Kennard. Suffered a stinger. Actually, maybe they had LeBron out there in the 4th quarter to set a screen on Luke Kennard and try to take him out, because that's what happened. So got a stinger in that left shoulder. And this is a big deal because that thing was tight and the Grizzlies were really struggling to score in the 3rd quarter, in part because Dillon Brooks kept shooting. And he kept shooting because the Lakers were giving him shots, and it was just clogging things up for everybody else. Taylor Jenkins and Bontemps, you've been calling for this for I don't know how long.
About a calendar year.
He pulled the plug. He pulled Brooks less than 4 minutes into the 3rd quarter.
Is it true that the Grindhouse fans were a little grumbly when Dillon Brooks was getting the ball?
When he touched it, it was like, oh, like groaning.
It was like a bear. Like
I was going to say, the bear is growling.
No, it was like if you poke a bear in a really, unfortunate spot. But by the way, Dillon Brooks is mad at me right now, which is unfortunate. I feel bad.
Why?
I do things like quote him accurately and say that the Grizzlies might have to move on from him this summer.
Dillon Brooks has made his own bed on every front of this thing.
Absolutely. And he's played like crap in this series.
That's part of
which
the
fronts. Which is why Taylor Jenkins pulled him less than 4 minutes into the 3rd quarter. In comes Luke Kennard, and whoosh, there goes the Grizzlies. And Kennard only took 3 shots in the game. Matter of fact, he didn't take any shots in the 3rd quarter. Luke Kennard, though, just his presence out there, you are not going to have his man with a foot in the paint.
Well, go back to game 4,
right? Guarding him.
To go back to game 4, they went on that run in the 3rd quarter. The second he comes in, they have him in the slot. The Lakers obviously have to show out to him. He's a 40+% 3-point shooter. He's the only guy on the team, basically, other than Desmond Bain, who's shooting.
Yeah, I think it was 50 plus for the Grizzlies. Led the league in 3-point percentage for the last 2 years. And you give Ja Morant in particular space, like he can do some serious damage with that.
I have to say, at the end of game 4, the Grizzlies, that overtime game, the Grizzlies just it felt to me like they made like 1 3 in the second half.
They were 1 for 16. They were 1 for 16 on corner threes in the competitive portion of the game.
Okay. So the game was over in overtime. They stick Luke Kennard out there. He takes a corner 3. Bam. And I was like, because you know what? Part of it is I got skin in the game here because I really liked that trade that Memphis did at the deadline. Mm-hmm. And I was saying for weeks, like, that could be a really impactful trade. And then it hasn't been because Kennard hasn't played. So Kennard comes in. And look, I've talked, when you talk to NBA coaches and also players, they talk about the difference that 2 feet can make. Yeah. If Luke Kennard is standing in the corner versus Dillon Brooks, in that case, it's more than 2 feet. But if the guy's 2 feet further
it's
outside,
10 feet with that.
Right. The guy's
that step could be the difference between a missed shot and a made shot.
Yeah. And so, it's funny. Devin Booker, I just covered the Sun series, and Booker, the Clippers made the decision they were going to stand on Kevin Durant's toes, no matter where he was. And Booker played a lot of point guard in that series. And Booker was like, it feels really strange to have Kevin out there in the corner and not have this Hall of Famer and Durant, and he's basically just standing in the corner.
Right.
But oh my God, do I love it, because there's so much. He shot 60%
because it's 4-on-4 with a wide open floor at that point.
Right. He's like, I feel bad having him do it, but stay over there, buddy. They actually need to get Durant more shots, but that's not a topic for today. But yeah, Taylor Jenkins, this is one of those difficult situations. Especially this season, Dillon Brooks has been a punching bag recently. There were stretches this season where he really did help him. I don't think he was ever.
He is absolutely one of the best defensive players in the NBA. We've talked about this. He should be an all defensive player. I'd have had him first team. He should at least be second team. And that's where it's tough. The drop off when you put Kennard on the floor instead of Dillon Brooks on the defensive end is drastic, but it's just as drastic on the offensive end. Brooks has just been killing them. He's shooting 30% from the floor, 21.6% from 3-point range, and taking a lot of shots because the Lakers are basically rolling out the red carpet. And I think it is in his head. I think that there's a lot of things that are in his head right now. So it's obviously unfortunate for the Grizzlies that Kennard got his shoulder banged up. Taylor Jenkins was asked, hey, would you have gone back to Brooks if Kennard didn't get hurt? And he didn't give a straight answer. He kind of, who knows how the game would have gone. If I'm him, I'd have lied my ass off. No doubt we're going back to Dillon for sure. But because I was actually thinking early in the fourth quarter with the lead as big as it was, I was thinking this is going to let Taylor off the hook because he can put Brooks back in the game without fear of blowing it. And not have, because if you bench him for the last 20 minutes and 15 seconds, it was already a little bit of a thing. If you bench him for the last 20 minutes and 15 seconds, it's a big bit of a thing.
Well, and if you go, and again, to go back to game 4, if you can have Xavier Tillman on LeBron and it's not killing you, if that remains the case, then there's no point in having Dillon Brooks on the court because that's why you have him out there. There's nobody else on the Lakers that 100%. Desmond Bane or these other guys can't easily handle. Not that Austin Reeves isn't going to score, but like, I don't mean easily handle like they're going to shut him down, but like LeBron is going to overwhelm physically Desmond Bane if he's right. He's going to overwhelm the other guys on the roster. That's why Dillon Brooks, in theory,
you don't think Kennard can guard LeBron?
Probably not. But if to put it mildly, but if you can put Xavier Tillman on him and you're not going to get killed, then you got to get Dillon Brooks out of the game. That's
my thing in the in game 4. Like Tillman guarded LeBron the vast majority of that game, and I'm saying, hey, if Dillon Brooks isn't guarding LeBron, why is he on the floor?
And actually, insane.
Our old pal Bob Voulgaris, the somewhat infamous
the sports team owner, the hockey. The soccer team,
football, Spanish football, but the former Mavericks executive, obviously, guy who made a ton of money gambling on the NBA before that. He was sitting actually right next to Shannon Sharp Like
There was some
the
pretty
seat-
funny
yeah,
tweets and videos of Shannon.
yeah, the seat next to
going
him.
crazy.
Anyways, so I stop. He's been at all the games in LA, so I always stop by to say hi to him at halftime or whatever. And I asked him, I said, "What would you do with Dylan Brooks?" And I thought I knew his answer, and it was, he said, "I wouldn't play him."
Well,
Now,
yes.
It's the same as he wouldn't have played Porzingis in the Mavs series against Clippers. It's easy to say that from a, hey, strategy, data, analytics standpoint. It's much harder to execute it when you have the personality to deal with. Just like,
Yeah.
And DeMichael Cole covers the Grizzlies for the Memphis Commercial Appeal. We were talking about this. He goes, "Hey, they sat Steven Adams."
I was just about to say that.
Yeah. He said they sat Steven Adams in the first round last year. And I said, a little bit different personality. And let's be honest, Steven Adams can handle that situation like an adult. I don't think Dylan Brooks can.
Well, and that's then you know what? Like, then why are you acting like Dylan Brooks is a critical part of your team and leaning on him to this degree anyway? And why did you lean on him after the way things went last year? You know what I mean?
Well,
Like, that's the part that's
also to that point. Why, when you were handing out extensions to everybody else who was extension eligible, was he the only one who didn't get one? And I think you know the answer to that.
Of course.
I think we also saw the answer again when they drafted Zaire Williams. He's not ready. They drafted David Roddy. He's not ready. They tried to trade for Mikal Bridges. They tried to trade for OG Anunoby.
right. Drafted LaBravia too, who's hurt.
Yeah, I was on the fence about Dylan Brooks. I thought I've always been saying I thought it was going to be a difficult decision this summer. I don't think it's a difficult decision. I think
I am still on the fence, but it's getting hard to stay there. Speaking of not being guarded on the outside, LeBron is 6 of 36 on threes in this series.
Yeah.
And he had his lowest 3-point shooting percentage during the regular season, I think, in 7 years.
At the same time, if LeBron comes out in game 6 and goes 6 for 8 from 3, it's like
that's what I'm saying. Like,
the
way he's shooting it and the way he looked in game 5, but I fully believe he could just pour it all out.
And he might have to. And the other guy too, we haven't even talked about him. AD had a big game in game 5, but look, this has got to be AD and LeBron in game 6. These guys have to show up and have to produce. And this really has to be game 7. Because if they lose this game and they're going back on that short turnaround, obviously they have a chance to win. They could easily be the 2 best players in any game, but that's a huge ask as opposed to having a game at home you can win.
AD has had 2 duds in this series. He's been dominant at times, but he's had 2 absolute duds in this series.
Well, they
talking
can't
about
afford
a third.
Well, we did a pod before them, but can you imagine if they don't come back and win that game 4, what the conversation is about AD after Rui Hachimura is the one rolling down the lane for the game tying potential basket in the final seconds. He's just hanging out in the corner. I mean, that could have been
AD did not even look like he wanted to even look at the ball late in regulation and when LeBron made the play.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.